Hello everyone, I'm Yvonne, a children's librarian here at the Manchester City Library, and welcome to our winter elementary experiments. These are activities and crafts made for grades 1 through 6 that have a science, technology, engineering, art, or math component. We are continuing to have our in-person elementary experiments on the second Wednesday and the fourth Tuesday of each month at 3:30 p.m. in the Winchell Room at the Manchester City Library. We are posting these videos for anyone who is not able to attend, and they will be posted at the same time as our events. But if you are in grades 1 through 6 and you would like to attend and do our experiments in person, please register for our next elementary experiments on our website. In-person attendance will also guarantee that you will get a kit to help you complete our craft portion of our elementary experiments. Although any extra kits that we have will be available at the Children's Reference Desk while supplies last. So if you weren't able to go in person, but you can get to the library after this video goes up, just go ahead and ask to see if we have any extras. So with all of that out of the way, let's get into this week's elementary experiments. Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's elementary experiments, where we are doing some very icy experiments. We really are doing basically 2 experiments this week as opposed to like an activity and a craft. But that's okay because it'll give us extra practice with making a hypothesis and filling out lab reports, which I think is fun. So our very first one we are going to do is our insulation activity. So if you would gather your items, I will explain a little bit more about what insulation is and how to do our experiment. For our insulation experiment, we are trying to not melt the ice. So basically what we are going to do is we are going to take several bowls, like the ones that I have here. We're going to find bowls that are about the same size. I know before with our experiments we've talked about controls and variables. So a control is something that you want to keep the same. And we want to have as many different things or as many factors controlled as possible in an experiment so that the variable or the things that we change, we can know that the variable is what is causing the difference in the experiment or the difference in the result or conclusion or the very end of our experiment, right? So for instance, in this one where we are trying to create insulation for our ice, and insulation is basically something that you use as a protective layer to try and prevent change. In this case, we are trying to keep the ice temperature from changing for kind of like as long as possible. So if you think about like a thermos that is insulated, so it keeps your drink or your food warm or hot. Our houses are insulated, so they have things inside of the walls to prevent the cold from outside in the wintertime getting in, or the cold on the inside with air conditioning in the summertime from getting out, right? So here I have 5 different bowls filled with like random stuff that I found. And that is the fun thing because you can choose whatever you want to test your insulation, right? And that is our variable. So the thing that we are putting inside of our container is the difference in the experiment. Everything else we want to keep as similar as possible. So all of my bowls are the same size. I have my ice cubes. They're all going to be I would just use ice cubes that were all the same size. And I would put all of my bowls in one place close together, so the temperature and like the amount of sunlight that they would get, all of those would be about the same. So that would all be a part of our control. So we also have our lab sheet to keep track of all this for. So I have made my lab sheet here, the one that we're going to use at the library. It's a little bit fancy, but you can make something really simple and easy for yourself at home. You just need a piece of paper and then to set up however many bowls that you have, spaces. You don't have to do 5, that's just how many I have on my sheet. If you just have 2 bowls that you want to test with, that's totally fine. And then I would write here in this column the different types of insulation, and that's the things that I'm putting in my bowl to try and block the temperature change. So for me, I have some pieces of felt, I have some cotton balls, I have some foil, some pom-poms, and then I found some marshmallows. I thought that would be a fun thing to try and use as insulation. If you want to be fancier, if you want to mix up your different things, like if you wanted to combine foil with cotton balls, that's totally fine, but then you just need to describe how you like put it into the bowl and what you used in this column, if that makes sense. And then here on the hypothesis prediction, I would say before I started my experiment, I would say what I think or how I think each material is going to insulate the ice, like how well it's going to keep the ice from melting, right? Like if I think that like cotton balls would probably keep that, have the least ice melted, right? And then maybe felt, maybe then pom-poms, and then maybe our marshmallows, and then foil. I honestly don't know about the foil because metal can conduct energy. I just thought it would be fun. And so for my prediction or my hypothesis, I can do it as simply as numbering, like which one I think will be the best to the least, or I could write specifically how I think like each one will prevent the ice from melting. And then basically what we would do is we would get our timer. Like I have a timer on my phone. If you guys have at the library, we do have little like egg timers. If you have an adult who can help you set a timer. So with our control, we could look at the ice that we had put into the felt and say, okay, it's melted a little bit. It didn't melt as much as, or like it melted more possibly than the one in our cotton balls. But then if we look at the control, the one that is the ice cube is just sitting in the bowl, we can say, oh, but if we had nothing, if we didn't have the felt, it would have melted this much. And that's why a control is very useful in experiments. Although you don't always need it, I think that it can be very helpful just to know what would happen if you didn't do anything at all. So go ahead. We on the instructions, I think we suggest that you check on your ice cubes every 10 minutes. And that would be just so that you can make sure that it doesn't get too melty, and you can kind of like watch it as the ice cubes change over time. So go ahead, write down, find your insulation items, write down what you think is going to happen, and then see if you were correct when you write down your conclusion. Definitely have some fun. Talk with your any siblings or friends or adults that might be around and might want to make their own guesses, and then you can see who is right if you want to add a little bit of competition to it. Either way, I hope that you have fun and that you learn what you should store ice in if you don't have a freezer. All right. I will put this away and get ready for our craft, which is in this case another experiment and the bear part of our berry icy. All right, welcome to our craft experiment where we are going to grow our own polar bear. For this, you can go to the Manchester City Library and see if we have any extra kits that you can take home to help you do this. Otherwise, you will have to gather all the supplies yourself. So in our kit, we have our instructions as usual. We have an index card. We have our lab sheet for our Grow Your Own Polar Bear. And then we have our 4 cups and 6 of our gummy bears. What we're going to do is we are going to first of all decide what are the 4 types of liquid we are going to grow our polar bear or our gummy polar bear in. So the suggestions that I have are pretty easy to find and gather. So I'm going to do some water, I'm going to do some salt water, I'm going to do some baking soda and water, and then I'm going to have some vinegar. As you might be thinking, we do have 4 cups and 4 liquids, but there are 6 gummy bears in here, and that is because we are going to take 4 of them to put in our liquids. We are going to have 1 as our control. If you guys remember from our activity, we did talk about controls and how the control is what you leave and don't do anything to. And then you can compare the things that you experiment on, the things that we are going to put in the liquid, with the control, which we don't do anything to. And then, of course, we do have 1 extra, and that is just in case 1 fell out of our bag or 1 got stomped on or otherwise is maybe broken, and therefore we just have an extra 1 just in case. I will also remind you guys that even though they are very cute and look tasty, and we do have an extra 1, please do not eat these because they are part of our experiment. And for one, it's a very good thing to practice not eating while you do experiments because, you know, we have other like chemicals and stuff involved, and we just want to never put anything into your mouth that you are using for an experiment unless you have specifically are making food in your experiment to be eaten. Also, our little guys have been put into these cups and have been living in the bags and have not been like sealed or kept from getting dirty specifically to be safe to eat. So please do not eat these little guys. They are for experimentation only. But to get back to the more fun part, we have our 4 cups ready for our liquids, or maybe almost ready. What I like to do, because sometimes the liquids look very similar and I have a hard time remembering, I will write the type of liquid on the cup so I don't forget. All right, so I've got my cups ready to be filled. I also wrote what liquids I'm going to be using here into my lab sheet, so that will be ready. So right now I'm going to go ahead and fill these with liquids. As we've talked about in other experiments, here we want to control the variables that we are not testing as much as possible. So it might be a good idea to put the same amount of liquid in each cup, and then we're going to want to put them to soak in sort of like the same area. So first of all, we're going to put in our plain water. All right, I'm going to add my solids. Before we put in our bears and we start our timer, it's probably a good place to say what we think is going to happen to each of these bears that we put in here. There's a little bit of a spoiler in the title in the Grow Your Own Polar Bear. So we are expecting our gummies to grow or to expand by absorbing some liquid. So the real question is, like, what liquid do you think is going to help your gummy bear grow into the biggest polar bear? Again, in your hypothesis and prediction, you can be very specific, or you can just do something really simple, like number which one do you think is going to be first, second, third, fourth kind of thing. So we'll definitely fill that out, and then we can pop our gummy bears into our liquid and start our timers. So I've got my sheet all filled out with what I think will happen. I have actually not run this through with these before, so my guess is as good as your guess. Now we're going to go ahead and take our gummies and drop them in. If you need a timer, ask an adult to help you find one that will work well for you. Okay, and then we have our controls that will sit here and wait. And so this you can basically wait as long as you want for this, but for this one, it's probably best to leave it for a pretty long amount of time, possibly even overnight, depending on what you're doing and where you're set up. But I would definitely suggest maybe giving it, like trying to have enough time to do at least an hour of observation or of checking them back in to see how well they have grown. But basically, anytime that you see a difference and you want to stop the experiment, you totally can. In the lab sheet, there is a spot down here, as usual, so that we can say how long that you left all of your bears in the liquid when you are done with your experiment. That way, if you want to compare your experiment with someone else's experiment, you'll also know the difference or the variable of time between your two experiments to see if that changed anything. But as for what we're doing right now, we are going to wait, and I will check back in with you to see the results in a little bit. All right, so it has been about an hour and a half of my gummy bears soaking to become growing polar bears in my different liquids. And so here we have my card with all of the different liquids. I think it's a really good thing to have the control group because when I was first looking at, especially the saltwater one, I really wasn't sure that anything had happened to it. But if you compare them with the control group, you can really see how much that they have changed. The last thing for me to do is to fill out my lab report with the conclusions to see if what I guessed was correct about my liquids was actually what happened. It's actually going to be a little bit hard to tell. Some of them are still relatively close in size, although I was definitely right about the salt water, so go me. In fact, leaving them in the liquids for an even longer period of time would show the differences in final size even more. So that's something to think about for your own experiments. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining me for our Berry Icy Elementary experiments. So it was definitely heavy on the experiment part of it, but I hope that you had fun making all of your guesses for this week. Remember to go ahead and register if you would like to join us for our next elementary experiments. It is going to be on the 26th, the day after Christmas. And you will see in our preview that we are going to be talking about static electricity. So hopefully that will be fun. And if ever anyone wants to read some books about what we have learned today, I definitely have some recommendations that you can find at the Manchester City Library also coming up. But that's it for me. Hope you enjoyed. Hope to see you again. Until then, bye.